Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part two in our Where Next series. I am Allison Foster. I lead marketing for Data Source and EXL Analytics. I have Asif Katala with me today, and he is our vertical lead for banking, financial services, and retail. So I'll just jump right in. Asif, good to see you again. You know, a lot has changed since we last spoke in part one, and a lot of stores have reopened in multiple states with more kind of in the planning stage so far. So how is that coming along from your perspective?
Yeah. Hi, Alison. Great to be here again. Like we discussed last week, right? So there were two key traits which I had mentioned that would separate the survivors of this pandemic from the rest, right? So one was the financial health of the company getting into the pandemic, and the second was the maturity of the digital transformation program internally, right? And both those continue to be pretty strong indicators of how different retailers are surviving and how they are faring in this times, right? We're starting to see that play out on both ends of the spectrum, right? So, for example, if you look at it, companies like JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, they filed for Chapter 11 protection. Brooks Brothers continues to look for a buyer. Pier 1 Imports, Lord& Taylor, they've announced their intention to liquidate. J. Crew, and the list goes on, right? So we're seeing a lot of these retailers continue to struggle. On the other hand, those that were proactive and had invested in their digital transformation, they, backed by fortunate spike in demand in some of the services that they offer, they're starting to actually come out strongly and are able to win market share as well. I mean, if you look at the likes of Target and Apple or Facebook, you're seeing them announce expansion plans, and to some extent, you're also seeing them talk about new and innovative ways in which how they want to roll out how they digitally engage with their customers. So all of those are show up intent, and then you can see in the results as well, right? So they're coming out pretty strongly. So just to summarize, I think the digital divide as a forward indicator of success in these times is getting more pronounced, and I think that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, thank you. So just going back to one of our main questions from last time, what's next for the industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, right? So as things start to settle from the immediate shock response of the retailers, we're seeing that the digital first movers, so to say, right, they are doubling down on their data-driven digital transformation journey, right? This is clearly a well thought out response to what they're seeing in the market and how they plan to bounce back from the crisis, right? So, let me explain why I think that way, right? So over the past few weeks, we've seen a few things, right? So we've seen a significant drop in store spending, while there's been a huge spike in online sales, right? Given that entirely new segments of customers who, for various reasons in the past, shied away from buying online, they're getting exposed to the digital channels. They're getting more comfortable. They're getting more comfortable sharing their credit card information, banking details on store websites. With a secular shift happening internally within consumer behavior, it is fair to say that some portion of the in-store sales is permanently shifting to digital. Right? I mean, when we return to the stores, these sales are not coming back to the store. They are going to be remain on the digital channels, right? So, what that means from a retailer's perspective is the role of their digital storefront has just jumped up a few notches, right? It's become more important than in the past in their overall strategy, right? So at this point, I mean, it is important that businesses don't just respond to this crisis by putting up an e-commerce landing page, but truly absorb the philosophy that going digital is much more than just selling online, right? So if done right, this digital transformation will unclog multiple inefficiencies across the value chain of a retailer, right? It will make your processes faster, cheaper, and more efficient. And if done right, in many cases, right, as we've seen it with our customers as well, some of these initial phases will become self-funding and fund the subsequent phases, right? So we're currently working with the customers to transform across the value chain, right? Be it the front, middle, or back office process through data-driven insights and trying to bring in automation where possible. And the results have been pretty encouraging.
All right. So you mentioned going digital is more than just selling online. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So digitization is much more than just selling online, right? So if you look at a modern digitally native retailer, right? I mean, those who started with the digital consumer in mind. So the way they are set up, they have data moving seamlessly across all of their customer-facing apps, through the supply chain, through merchandising, product design, and all of their support functions, right? Obviously, there are multiple feedback loops in place. And what this enables is the overall ecosystem is optimized to enable efficient data capture, data pipelines, which bring the right data to the decision makers at the right time so that they're able to make real time, I mean, they have access to real time insights as they're making decisions, right? In the case of legacy retailers, especially those that are trying to pivot or transform from their legacy business models to a more digitally enabled business model, we usually start with a diagnostic assessment, right? So we try to identify bottlenecks in the value chain, which obviously, as you can imagine, it differs for each company, right? I mean, depending on the business model and where they are on their transformation journey, right? In the current climate, immediate areas obviously to investigate are demand generation and fulfillment functions. Every other piece of your business can be investigated to the extent that it supports one of these, right? And it should be having immediate linkages and able to unclog something in your value chain, right? Typically, I mean, we start with an assessment, and then as an outcome of the assessment, we have a prioritized list of initiatives. With those in place, the focus shifts to creating minimum viable products within 2 to 3 months, right? So I mean, at this point, I mean, what we try to do is massively focus on the 80-20 rule to make sure that across multiple initiatives, we are able to get MVPs out, which are able to start unlocking value. And then our decision makers are able to use that to improve the way they operate and are able to help those businesses improve, right? So once these initiatives start going into production, the success of this overall program will depend on defining clear measures of success for each initiative, continuously tracking those KPIs, and then again, coordinating implementation across multiple initiatives that are underway, and then making sure that each of these initiatives are able to successfully deliver to the business value that was originally anticipated. And then on real time, you're able to reallocate budgets to the extent that's needed, right? So a lot of these things come together in making sure that companies are going truly digital. I hope that answers your question.
It did, thank you. Now going back to demand generation and fulfillment functions, how is analytics helping?
Great. I mean, we are actually helping in multiple different ways, right? So again, like I said, I mean, I mentioned this in our last conversation as well, right? I mean, immediately, all retailers need to focus on things that, I mean, they need to back their strengths and do what has been right for them, what has been working for them, right? Obviously, they need to retain their existing customers to defend the business, and where possible, attract new customers who are open to switching loyalties in these times, right? If you think of it from an analytics perspective, there are 3 or 4 areas that we've been working with our customers today. One is customer analytics. Obviously, we are enabling our clients with insights to proactively reach out to their customer base with relevant messages, right? So even if customers aren't spending right now, just you want to make sure that you're in touch with them, staying relevant, you're reaching out to them with appropriate messages so that when the spending returns, your brand recall is high and your customer base comes to you, right? So that's from that perspective, we've been helping with communication strategy for our clients. From an operations perspective, we've been helping with workforce management and optimizing staffing for stores, warehouses, delivery, and customer support, right? So obviously, we're trying to model out different scenarios for their demand. And again, there are so many constraints put in place through these social distancing protocols. So trying to bring it all together and try to help with optimizing their staffing and obviously enabling fulfillment, right? And then from a demand perspective, right? I mean, demand modeling is something which our clients are interested in, and I'm pretty sure all retailers are focusing on that as well, right? So through some estimates that I recently read, it looks like the value of excess inventory at the end of this summer will be twice of what it's been, twice of what is normal for these times, right? So again, clearing excess stock through the most efficient means will become a a huge indicator of how profitable businesses are when they come out of this, right? So from that perspective, we are enabling our customers with pricing and markdown optimization as well. And this will continue to be a high priority for most retailers in the immediate term as they deal with excess inventories and backlogs, right? So that's something which, again, if I were to just summarize, from customer analytics perspective, operations, demand, and pricing markdown optimization, all of these are areas where we continue to work with our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned a client case where EXL enables a solution like what you were just talking about. Do you want to talk through that success story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this example that you're referring to, right, is of a client where we stood up an end-to-end analytics solution to efficiently gather and organize data to make it available for downstream consumption by analytical models and dashboards and reports, right? So make no mistake, what you're referring to is an outcome of maybe 2 or 2.5 years of effort, right? But the approach we took at the outset is something that's extremely relevant now, right? So our focus was to go in with use case driven data pipeline automation, right? So in a way, we planned for multiple 8 to 12-week sprints with a target to create something tangible for a specific core group of users so that they could do their job more effectively and efficiently, right? For example, one of the first examples was to enable a cross-sell recommendation engine, right? For this use case, the solution phase for this involved like identifying the bare minimum data that we needed to ingest, cleanse, integrate, and make accessible to the predictive models to be able to score different customers and then predict or recommend what are some of the things that would be of interest to them, right? We were able to create that in about 8 weeks, and the models were pushed to production soon thereafter. Again, another example, right? So we wanted to create a tool for our client to monitor customers as they were migrating from physical channels to their digital channels, right? Back then, the client used to run these as 2 separate P&Ls or 2 separate businesses. So obviously they were sitting in 2 siloed systems and they did not have an ability to get an integrated view of the customer, right? So we designed a solution that relied on multiple indicators to predict if a customer that was getting picked up on a digital channel, was that a known customer or if they had been newly acquired, right? Again, depending on how the model decided these customers came in, it would trigger another sequence of marketing communication models in terms of like what message to communicate to them through what channel, when and how, and all of those things, right? So again, these are just a couple of examples of what we were able to enable with this analytical environment. Fast forward 2 or 3 years later, today this environment has data coming in from over 50 different systems, gets consumed by hundreds of predictive models and reports powering various stages of the customer lifecycle, right? The business impact is there for everybody to see. The clients continue to invest in this environment. But then what's most exciting about this was instead of taking a big bang approach, we prioritized use cases and we said like, okay, what is it that we can do in 8 to 12 week sprints so that we are able to continuously unlock value? And then through doing this phased approach, what happened was some of these initial phases, they almost funded the subsequent phases as business value was getting realized, right? So that's something which is extremely relevant in these times. And then other companies or clients which are looking to go down this journey, that's probably the approach that they should be taking as well.
All right, well, thank you for that. Thank you for all this information. It was great to connect with you again, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Allison. It's a pleasure as always. In closing, I just want to mention that while the change that the market is experiencing is unprecedented, it is obvious at this point, at least based on the initial reactions that we're seeing and our own experience in the market, right? Businesses that prioritize data-driven decision-making will not only survive the pandemic, but then they'll also build a significant competitive advantage as the world emerges to a new digitally savvy next-gen customer, right? So it is obviously not the greatest place for most businesses to be, but then it is a great opportunity for businesses to double down, pivot on their existing legacy strategies, and then start focusing towards a more digital consumer. So I'm excited about where this is going. Thank you.
That's great. Everyone, we hope you enjoyed episode 2, and we hope to see you again for episode 3 next Friday. Thank you.